So as I often say in this meeting, I just have a couple GA4 updates to chat about. First one is GA4 does now work with Screaming Frog. That came out in December, Screaming Frog version 18. I haven't tried it out yet, but the integration exists. Similarly, last week, CallRail announced that they are rolling out their GA4 integration. Again, haven't tried that one out, but it does sound like you can use parallel tracking in that. So that's great to see. And I finally this week ran across my first chat system that has a native GA4 integration. Talk2, which is not one I'm very familiar with, but it does have a GA4 integration. So we're really starting to see more products integrate with GA4, which is really exciting to see. Some other recent new GA4 updates that have come out is that you can now customize this homepage. This is how it looks at default, but now you can drop these down and choose other items. This is your quick homepage snapshot. This is just the default version. You have been able to change this time for a while, but right now, say I don't want event count and I want revenue and total revenue. I can just put that number in there easily now. This feature's only been out for a little bit of time, so just exciting to see. It's apparently been a really big complaint about GA4 that these customizations of this main homepage didn't really exist. Another one that I just wanted to bring up is in e-commerce purchases, we were talking about some of the categories you can get into with your products. And down in here, this is kind of the default. What you can still see is when you get into here into item category, this is the primary category. Here we can see pallet racks, shelving, conveyors, etc. But then we can also get down into further categories. So in this case, this is the subcategory, category 2, pallet rack beams, pallet rack uprights. Those are subcategories of the main pallet rack category. So that's how you can really get into your subcategories very quickly here in GA4. You can go up to 5. However, that does depend on the client having 5 set up. And that's going to be a limitation on if the client actually set up 5. And our sites that use Shopify, I don't believe Analyzify lets them get lower than 1. So I just don't think Shopify has that capability right now, but maybe they'll get it in the future. And another thing here is if it has different brands, you can sort by brands in this report. Another thing that GA4 just added is this landing page report. People were complaining that it was really hard to duplicate the UA landing page and reporting in GA4. You had to go into explorations, and now there is a landing page. This is across all channels. However, I can filter it down into just organic. So that is how we will be able to. I did pull up the UA report earlier, and I can confirm that I was able to filter this to organic, and it was very, very close to what UA is reporting. So that data is very similar. And then another cool thing is in Search Console, they actually have some pretty nice Search Console reports here in GA4. You can either do by queries or just search traffic. In this case, it's going by landing page. So we have our clicks, our impressions, click-through rate, average search position users, and then some engagement metrics that are listed by default in here. On these ones that are underlined in GA4, you can hover over it and it'll give you a little explanation of what the metric is for these newer metrics. So for example, engaged sessions is number of sessions that last longer than 10 seconds or had a conversion rate or had 2 or more screens or page views. So you can see some of those metrics. Downside of this is I can't figure out how to remove branded traffic from this. Haven't even figured out if it's possible, and I just haven't figured out how to do it, or if the functionality just doesn't exist. So right now, this queries report does have some cool information, but it's very similar to Search Console. Again, I did pull up their Search Console and it is within a couple of clicks. So they're very, very similar data. Really, the big difference is I think even though they both default to last 28 days, it's a different 28 days because the Search Console traffic hasn't been pulled into GA4 yesterday. So there's a day difference in where the data is living in these two products right now. Another new GA4 metric is GA4 is trying to automatically track form fills. I'm not convinced it's working as intended. This is one site that we haven't set up the form fill tracking on. However, if we look at these form starts versus form submits, substantially higher people are starting the form than submitting it, which would make sense. There are always probably going to be people who don't do that. However, this percentage, the number of people who are starting the form is very high, in my opinion. So I'll be curious to know once we get actual form tracking set up on the site, how these numbers compare. It's also not turned on all of our sites. It's a newer metric. It's not turned on by default. Right now, I'm not sure it's working as intended because some of the answers I've seen and what other SEOs are saying, it seems really high. At this point, I'd say it might just make your event count look huge, which event counts in GA4 look huge anyway. So is that really a big issue? I don't think so. I'm really curious when we get it turned on more sites that are also tracking forms, how those numbers compare. Haven't really been able to find a ton of data. And it also, how it's measuring, essentially it just says the first time a user interacts with the form in a session, it's measuring that, like how that form is coded into the site and how you interact with it. So I think also sites that are built in non-traditional ways could also have some issues with this metric. So not perfect, but could be an interesting one once they get it maybe figured out a little bit more.